The discovery of bromate in Coke's Dasani water in the UK occurred just 5 weeks after its launch. While the brand continued apace in the US, in the UK, Dasani was dead. To many, a huge American multinational's attempt to sell us purified tap water with an apparent markup of over 3,000% was the ultimate indignity. It raised questions about the power of branding, the power of multinationals, and the power of the globalized market itself.
Bottled water is the most revealing substance for showing us how the global capitalist market works today. It tells us that we're no longer buying things for their use value. That, in a sense, we're buying choice. We're buying freedom. We're buying all kinds of insubstantial things.
For some of us, choice and freedom is worth the price we pay. But for others, it represents the excess and inequality of the modern world. A world where nearly 1 billion people have no access to clean water at all.
One thing we cannot lose sight of is the ultimate absurdity of the bottled water industry. Here we have a world where people are dying of thirst, where people lack clean water to feed their children, and we're spending billions of dollars and huge amounts of energy moving water from people who already have it to other people who already have it.
Recognizing this inequality was a small group of businessmen who saw an opportunity. If they could create a completely new brand of bottled water, they could subvert the industry from the inside. This they did with a brand they called One Water. Its success was to have a major influence on the industry as a whole.
The bottled water market in the UK is incredibly congested. There are some really big brand leaders out there, the Nestlés, the Danones of this world. But from our perspective, I didn't look at them as competitors. They don't sit in the same area that we do. I just wanted to go out and take a small percentage share of a bigger market that they happen to be sitting in as well.
Where One Water different from other brands was in its simple proposition. There were to be no shareholders and no dividends, but instead 100% of their profits would go directly to African water projects.
We can't necessarily affect an industry, but we're trying very hard. But perhaps what we can do is repurpose some of the outcome of that industry for a better cause.
What the One Water brand was tapping into was a concept they called positive brand choice.
Positive brand choice is something I think that consumers have a real appetite for now. We're trying to tell them that by choosing our bottle of water, they could personally be responsible for bringing water to 10 African school kids for a day. And I think that's a really, really powerful proposition.
The consumer's positive brand choice was then turned directly into water projects for Africa.
The idea of play pumps came from something I read in one of the national newspapers, which celebrated this amazing invention that, a pump powered by children's play that could pump water industrially into tanks and provide enough water for a whole community. And I thought that was ingenious.
The play pumps gave the consumers of One Water a reason for their positive brand choice, but they also benefited the major retailers.
Our proposition, in a business sense, provides British retailers with brilliant corporate social responsibility stories, but it doesn't cost them anything, because all I am asking them to do is to take our range of One products for the same price that they would have bought those products from other suppliers.
With the help of major retailers, One Water has now provided clean water to over 1.4 million people. But they have also influenced the wider industry.
consumerism is changing, undoubtedly, and there is this growing ethical mega trend which is coming. We happen to be at the start of that, and I think what you'll find over time is that more and more companies will embed some kind of ethical bent into their strategy. I think the big multinationals have got a huge role to play in this. They can really lead this forward. I can't do that. I'm not big enough and powerful enough to do that.
One Water's annual turnover is less than £5 million, while the multinational group Danone's annual turnover stands at almost 13 billion. With this economic might, they are powerful enough to effect radical change. In 2005, they began to put their corporate muscle behind an ethical water campaign called Volvic 1 for 10.
A lot of smaller brands did ethical business, but we have marketing muscle and the distribution power, and we were happy to put it behind this program to involve more consumers and therefore give back more to society.
Volvic's strategy was simple. For every 1 litre bought, they would supply 10 litres of water to those most in need. With the 1 for 10 campaign, the Volvic brand funded 443 wells and gave access to clean water to 240,000 people. To some, this was a drop in the ocean.
On peut toujours faire plus, mais la vraie question, c'est de gérer des équilibres. Alors, est-ce que moi, patron de Danone, avec ma casquette qui travaille pour l'actionnaire, j'ai le droit d'arrêter les profits sur l'eau? Réponse, non. Est-ce que j'ai le devoir de donner tous les profits à l'actionnaire? Réponse, non. Donc il faut que je gère des équilibres. Alors je peux aussi ne rien faire. Il y a des gens qui font rien. Et en plus, qui se cachent derrière leur petit doigt en disant « Ah, je ne vais pas faire, c'est une goutte d'eau ». Et moi je crois qu'une goutte d'eau, plus 2 gouttes d'eau, plus 3 gouttes d'eau, plus 4 gouttes d'eau, ça finira par faire une rivière. Donc c'est très facile de critiquer l'entreprise, la multinationale et de dire c'est rien du tout. Mais les gens qui me disent ça, très souvent je leur demande et vous, vous faites quoi?
But as our consumer attitudes changed, the criticism of the industry only intensified. At the heart of the matter was what bottled water was actually made of: oil and water. The world's 2 most precious resources in one neat package.
If you take all the oil that goes into making the bottles, and then you add in the oil that it takes to move the water to bottling plants and then to distribution centers, and then take the oil that is used sending trucks around to pick up all the empties, it is the equivalent of filling each bottle of water 1/5 of the way with oil. But bottled water has a water footprint as well as a carbon footprint. On average, it takes 3 liters of water to make every 1 liter of water that goes on a shelf. And that other water goes into making the bottles, into cooling the machinery at the plant, and into washing the bottling plant.
Attacked from all sides, the industry is fighting back, arguing that its critics are using false statistics.
Bottled water is one of the most efficient ways in order to get water to the consumer. As a matter of fact, you need 1.5 liter of water to produce 1 liter of bottled water. You need 3 liters of water to produce 1 liter of a soda. You need 6 to 7 liters of water to produce 1 liter of beer. So the most efficient way to get liquid is bottled water.
The industry is also addressing its environmental impact.
Le développement durable, c'est l'équilibre entre le social, l'économique et l'environnemental. On réduit le poids des bouteilles. On fait maintenant plus de 40%, je crois, de nos bouteilles avec du RPET, du PET recyclé. On a déjà planté je ne sais plus combien de millions de mangroves au Sénégal. Pour une raison simple, c'est que la mangrove, c'est comme les forêts tropicales, capture très bien le CO2. Ça ne veut pas dire que tout est parfait. Et au bout du bout, comme toute activité humaine, il restera un solde du CO2. Il y en aura toujours un.
The industry really wants to address these environmental concerns head on, and it's doing everything it can to help resolve them. It can only play a part in the wider picture, but it's certainly doing a lot to help deal with the problem. The environment matters to this industry because it's their future.
But in spite of the protestations of the industry, bottled water is now questioned by our society in a way unimaginable only a decade ago.
In the last few years, we're beginning to see a backlash against bottled water, a real perception that bottled water may not be necessary, that it may have environmental liabilities that we want to deal with. And for the first time in decades, the sales of bottled water have started to drop. And I think they've started to drop because people are increasingly aware of the liabilities of bottled water, of the alternatives to bottled water, of the economic costs of bottled water.
With these questions refusing to disappear in the West, and with the growth rates of the past a distant memory, the multinationals are now concentrating their efforts in the emerging world. Asia and South America have become the new targets for market domination. This is a battle for the future of the industry, and it is being waged, once again, by those old adversaries at Nestlé and Danone.
It's purely population, and where the growth is, you go, as the bank robber once said, why do I go to the banks? Because that's where the money is. And when you look at the developing world, whether it's Latin America or Asia, huge growth opportunity there. If you don't get in early, you'll lose out.
Nestlé's global brand, Pure Life, is perfectly adapted to these new markets. First launched in Pakistan, the brand was then given a global rollout. As a purified water brand, it could be adapted to any territory it entered, with a price point to match.
The water market exists everywhere, but I don't think we can assure that the consumers in Pakistan, in India, that they can afford to have only access to Evian or to have only access to Vittel. And we have an opportunity, we have an obligation to give them other opportunities which are more cost efficient and which allow them to have access to good hydration.
To do this, Nestlé Pure Life has capitalized on the Nestlé name to sell in countries where they already had significant market share with their other food products.
Water quality issues and purity and unadulterated water is an important issue around the world. The consumer, when they drink water, want to be sure that there is unadulterated. So when Nestle entered the marketplace, they hit the sweet spot of the marketplace by calling it Nestle Pure Life. They entered with the quality image of Nestle, the name, the branding, and also we captured a very high share, and almost from the very beginning. It was a huge, huge success.
While Nestlé have utilized its global brand Pure Life to crack both the developed and emerging markets, its rival for global supremacy, Danone, have created specific brands for specific markets. In the rapidly expanding Far Eastern market, Danone's biggest hitter is Agua. In South America, it is Villavicencio and Villa del Sur. And in one of the world's biggest bottled water markets, Mexico, it is Bonafont. The potential for growth in these markets is huge.
Un des relais de croissance du groupe Danone dans tous les métiers, ce sont les pays émergents. 60% de nos volumes sont dans des pays à très forte croissance. Et même aujourd'hui, plus de la moitié de la marge est aussi fait dans ces pays à très forte croissance. Donc le moteur